Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, a growing but neglected global epidemic. We're all frogs in boiling water right now, period. Whether we realize it or not, whether we feel healthy or not tonight, we're all breathing this stuff in. It's clogging us up slowly but surely. It's absolutely happening. We're not speculating. We have about 6 lab tests from Shasta County alone. We know this material's in the air, and we know we're breathing it. There's no speculation on this. This is a bioaccumulative metal. It's just what we know about is lethally harmful. So this is a problem we all are experiencing to some degree. 1 in 3 older adults now dies with dementia and or Alzheimer's. Doesn't mean they die with it or from it, but they die with it. And all of us, again, are somewhere along that path. Cognitively, we all have this stuff in us. It's affecting us all to some degree. This is an older chart. I've used this chart before, but it's important because it shows the escalation for autism. We've gone from 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 50. That's a 10,000% increase. That should alarm people. So why are people watching American Idol and football and drinking beers and having tailgate parties? We're immersed in an absolute crisis right here, right now. So my attempt is to convey that message. The global depopulation policy killing us softly. How do you cool a population without panicking them? You know, I've stayed away from this subject in very much depth because I'd hoped people would come around and just to the simple notion they're being sprayed like rats day in and day out. But it seemed not enough have. As long as McDonald's is flipping burgers and Walmart's open, people seem to think everything's okay, but it's not. It's not. And this will come to a very abrupt end very soon. On the course we're on, there is really no denying at this point that Agenda 21 and eugenics appear to be a part of this equation, along with a lot of other things. Too many people want to put it in this box or that box. There's a lot of layers to this onion. This is one. U.S. admits to bioweapons tests. There's a very long list of absolutely documented U.S. biological testing on innocent populations. Many nations have done it. And this is, again, this is a hard reality that the American population will face soon, one way or the other. Heavy metals acting as endocrine disruptors. This is extremely serious. This equates to our reproductive abilities, hormonal production. It affects life and our bodily systems to the core. And this should alarm everyone. Obama, let's just cope and get along and go on, right? This is sort of like Bush said after 9/11 that let's just everybody go back and go shopping, and it's what the government wants us to do, just to do nothing. Can geoengineering save the planet? We have a lot of dialogue right now with a lot of very, very frightened meteorologists, scientists, a lot of people from academia that are either mentally retarded, clinically blind, or paid liars. There's no chance that anybody with a high double-digit IQ doesn't know what's going on up there. And I've talked to a lot of people from academia. I know a lot of them. A lot of them know, and they're scared. They're very scared. I had NOAA scientists a year and a half ago tell me off the record they're, quote, alarmed as hell. They don't know what to do about it because they have no First Amendment protection. So any notion that geoengineering can save the planet, we already know the answer. Geoengineering is killing the planet. The population bomb threatens the peace of the world. So what are we doing about it? This is something you'd expect the global elite to say. And I say if we're going to cut population, we should start with them. So, and this is their motto, the eugenics, the foundation of globalists. It's always been the case. We have David Rockefeller on the record stating that 95% of the population needs to go. And a lot of people have never seen these quotes, but they exist. So it should not be hard to connect the dots here. And at this point, we are all not only expendable to them, but we are a liability to them. It's something we need to remember. Plankton, the base of ocean food web, in big decline. There's a lot of ways to cool populations. When populations don't have anything to eat, they tend to die off. And right now, plankton stocks globally are about 50% declined. This is of immense importance. Plankton produces 50 to 60% of Earth's oxygen supply. Media is not reporting on this. What do they report on? On CNN, they'll grab some drama out of a hat, of which they probably have 1,000 more just like it. And we'll hear about 1 or 2 dramas for the course of weeks on end, while we have the house literally burning down. No plankton, no fish. We had the Anchovy fleet returned to the Pacific Northwest with no fish, zero, this last fall. So the food chain is breaking down right now. We're seeing marine life wash up on the shores of western North America, now in Texas. Some of this may be related to Fukushima radiation, but I think at this point still the majority related to a food chain that's collapsing. The bees, what about the bees? Is it farm chemicals? If it's farm chemicals, why are the bees just as dead 1,000 miles into the wilderness? Try to tell people this that are in the bee community. I've tried. Most won't listen. I've talked to some of the head people in the country. They want to stay in their cocoons. They've been taught and trained that unless it says in their peer-reviewed, establishment-approved manual that there's something going on in our skies, then it literally doesn't exist in their reality. The bee collapse disorder appears to be most directly related to geoengineering and the radio frequency signals. One more article, A World Without Bees. Einstein said, 4 years after the bees disappear, so will humans. We're on that track now. There are so many directions that the walls are closing in factors that lead back to geoengineering. So many roads lead back to geoengineering. Statewide king salmon decline points to outside forces, yet again, that I've just named. When you have no basis to the food supply, when you have an ozone layer that has been torn apart by these programs, excessive UV killing the plankton, food chain collapses. Right now, global pelagic fish populations are down 95%. It's not going to be long before there's nothing caught out of the sea. That's hard fact. Species extinction rate. You can see the graph there. It goes almost straight up. I've been over this figure before, but it's important to repeat. We're losing about 200 species a day. 200 a day going extinct. You hear a lot of people say that, well, that's normal. Species go extinct. That's 10,000 times normal. It's 10,000 times the background rate. Nothing normal about that. This is something that most of you probably haven't seen. It looks like a golf course. It's actually algae. This is the ocean. And you see people up on the beach behaving as if nothing's wrong. This is in China. Massive algae blooms are literally matting the ocean several feet thick. Those oceans are dead. They're dead in those regions. You don't get this sort of growth otherwise. Our media doesn't cover these sorts of things. It is literally ecosystem collapse. These dots are all dead zones. There's over 400 dead zones around the planet right now, some as big as 10,000 square miles. These are anoxic zones where there's no oxygen in the water. Everything dies. These zones are expanding. Again, media is not covering this. Massive fish die-off around the globe. This is just one scene of too many to even begin to show. And this is the sort of thing that all of us should be focused on. We will focus on it when there's nothing left to eat, but if we can be ahead of that before we reach the point that there's nothing left, maybe we'll have something to salvage. Acid test, rising CO2 levels kills ocean life. We have the oceans absorbing CO2. There's no question about this. They're acidifying rapidly. Crustaceans can't form shells as well. And you have an acidification that could kill all ocean life. Again, no life in the ocean, no terrestrial life. This is a very important graph. Change in Earth's total heat content. I want to stress, none of this is about Al Gore or carbon credits. I say that every time. I have great disdain for Mr. Gore. He's part of the problem. But that being said, make no mistake about it, the planet is warming. And any of these geoengineered events that we see that convince people otherwise are simply horribly spun events. And this is what it's important to remember about that. The blue graph you see is ocean heat content compared to atmospheric heat. A cubic meter of seawater holds 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. So it doesn't matter what they do geoengineering-wise. They can cool off temperatures at the surface. It means nothing compared to what's happening in the oceans. The oceans are warming extremely rapidly. Can't hide that for very long. And geoengineering appears to have played a big part in that warming, but not the only part. I want to stress this as well. Human activity is a form of geoengineering. When you put 4 billion gallons of hydrocarbon in the atmosphere a day, that's a form of geoengineering. People need to consider that. We would be exponentially better off without these climate engineering programs. The planet would have been able to respond. But bottom line is ocean heat building up extremely rapidly. This is ocean heat content as well. You see the graph go straight up. This is trends in global average absolute sea level rise. Are sea levels rising? Yes, they are absolutely rising. Anybody who says otherwise, tell them to prove it to you. If anybody says that the ice caps are gaining and sea levels dropping, tell them to prove it, because they can't. Sea level rise unstoppable, say scientists. This is what the hard frontline data says without any question at all. In fact, how much can sea levels rise? We have about 21 to 24 feet of sea level rise built into Greenland. We have about 197 feet built into Antarctica, about another 15 feet built into the rest of the world's glaciers. Right now, even conservatively from some of the frontline scientists, we're guaranteed 100 feet of sea level rise in the coming decades. Now, you'll find plenty of data to dispute that, but it's the same people that dispute how much oil was leaking from the Gulf, how much radiation we're being exposed to here. You must discern through this data, because there is so much false data out there, people don't know what to think. Annual minimum Arctic sea ice. A lot of headlines last fall that the sea ice was expanding. Wait the next 2 years, see what you see, because that was absolutely spun as well. It was the surface area that they measured, not the density, not the volume. The volume is still shrinking rapidly. It's 1/5 what it was 30 years ago. Geoengineering is keeping a thin layer with artificial ice nucleation and blocking of the sun 24/7. They're trying to keep that ice cap there to keep the methane in the sea floor. It's not working. It's making everything worse. That's what we're trying to expose. Geoengineering is destroying the ozone layer. This is part of, again, geoengineering being the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth. They try to address one thing and cause 100 more that are exponentially worse. So now, if you drive around Reading and look at the trees in Walmart, Costco, take a good look, because the bark is gone off the southwest side. It takes a lot of radiation to burn the bark right off the tree. We're being exposed to massive amounts of UVB and even UVC radiation now. UVC is the last stage before X-ray. We know this. We're metering it on the ground in California, Maine, Florida, and New Mexico. This is a penetration of UVB into the ocean. I talked about plankton dying, correct? Geoengineering on the shredding of the ozone layer, we've been told it was hairspray cans. Now, I ask you, what's more logical? Is it hairspray cans or military tankers dumping 100 tons at a shot up there, flying 24/7? They've been at this since at least the late 40s. We've been given a lot of red herrings as reasons for things that are happening. CFCs are bad for the atmosphere, but the geoengineering appears to be the largest causal factor, so the UV penetrates deeper into the ocean, kills the plankton stocks die, oxygen content goes down, fish stocks die. You can see how everything is connected. Everything's linked together. This is deviation from normal temperature map. This is over this is between 2008 and 2012, and the orange-red colors show increases from the 30-year average over that time. You see a couple of blue spots in Antarctica, but that's about it. So this is the true overall global picture. You see some blues off the coast of North America. If you look at that, that's where they blanket spray 24/7, shuts off our moisture. This isn't the first-year drought. We're in our 6-year drought. So from 2008 to 2012, they blanket sprayed the Pacific, we think in an effort to stop El Nino, to stop the El Nino event from happening, because that would have made global warming even worse. But what does that do to the rest of the planet when you shut off one of its natural mechanisms? So that blanket spraying all over the Pacific, it cooled the surface temperatures off there. But at what cost? At what cost? If it's killing everything inland, was that really a gainer? I don't think so. And this is a current map right now. This is through, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. This is an older map, but it shows a sequence. I'll show a newer one here. When you see a map that's that imbalanced, it should be a red flag. That can't be created naturally, where you have half the country frying and another half below normal temperatures. So the darker colors are various stages above normal, the middle being maybe 20 degrees above normal. You throw a rock and you're in below normal temperatures. This is a recent GIS map. Now, this is important to look at this map. As you see the blue colors over Canada and the eastern U.S., that's where heavy geoengineering is occurring. Geoengineering can and does cool massive regions temporarily at the cost of making the overall warming worse. So you have jet stream manipulation that pushes Arctic air down. You see even the Arctic is much warmer than Canada and the eastern U.S. So they can cool regions, make a lot of headlines. What's the real picture? That's the real picture.